It's gonna be that kind of night. Muted, muted, muted. My 5 by 5 now. I'm trying a couple of pieces of equipment. Am I good? Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Fixin'. Oh my goodness. Hello to everybody. So what I was saying was I missed a lot of your wonderful comments last night. And I went back today and looked at them. You guys are just so smart, and it was just really neat. Thank you guys. 5 by 5. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, it was so neat to do the Patrick Henry and on the 250th anniversary. So that was very cool. I did it's amazing how many people on Rumble took a view of that, and I'm really, really happy about that. All depends on where you're playing out. Like I said, I'm going to move it over probably from Facebook to X, and try that, and see, if we can pick up a couple people that might want to, join us in here to learn about this stuff. Again, we're an acquired taste, and I get this all the time. Here's the reason I believe at this point I've become really. Now I am about having people on the show that are just, just going to make stuff up out of whole cloth or whatever. Look, again, if you want to tell me a story, fantastic. I'm all about it. Tell me the story. I love Let's Read and some of the other stuff and some of the things on Reddit. And I think I listen to them and I think, it has an air of truth to it, or absolutely could be true. Either way, it was a well-written story, or, it entertained you. It kept you thinking. Love, love, love the stories. But if you have somebody on that wrote a book that says it's the definitive, haunting of whatever, or whatever it may be. And I know for a fact, like they're changing their stuff, or they're adding things, or they're just making stuff up, or if I don't know about a subject, hey, I'm right there. But I can't, my main thing is getting people the door slammed in their face in the paranormal. Like I've stated many times here on the show. I think, years ago, I'm listening to a podcast or an interview on a radio show or something, and a medium or a psychic or somebody like that comes out and they have great credentials and are, accredited across the board, all different, 5 stars, all on their book, #1 best-selling book or whatever. And they come out with these definitive rules, such as animals don't have souls. One of my, that one just doesn't fly here. I believe the direct opposite, complete 180, and if you believe differently, I'm not telling you can't believe it. What I'm saying is I don't want to have somebody on here that I think is going to come on and give, bad information or definitive information. And they're not saying it's their theory or it's their opinion or they're selling it as fact. And that breaks hearts, and it gets, it stirs up confusion, and it hurts people. And, it's the same as saying, you don't ever get signs from spirit. It's all your imagination. You know, your dead father's never going to drop a quarter, in your path, or a penny in your path, pennies from heaven, or anything like that. Never happens. It's absolutely bunk. Insert your idea, theory, thought, definitive answer from an expert here. I am not an expert. I've only been actively studying this for over 50 years. I say it all the time. Because if you were just to observe me on one of my shows, that probably wouldn't pop into your head that, I have been doing that. But what you're seeing now is the result at the end of that, where I'm just like, please don't say that on my show. Or can we just say, this is my opinion, or I beg to differ, that kind of thing. And I don't like to be rude to people either. What I really like to do is when people say stuff like that, I just like to push the button and say, tell us where we can find you, and where's your website, when's your next whatever, and get the heck off. Or too bad you got to go. Very much like my uncle. When he had enough at the dinner party, he'd just get up, start shutting lights off, and then his wife, my aunt, would just get up and start collecting plates, and the people are still at the table talking. She's getting coats. You know what I mean? Uncle's already going up the stairs, and that's it. Um, go home. You can't stay here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Yeah, in my humble opinion only. Exactly. Yep, absolutely. What are you saying, Vixen? Because I missed some of your wisdoms last night, and everybody that was helping out last night, I just appreciate it so much. Paranormal is woo, I think, by design. The entities, elemental, and even spirits can appear as so many shapes. Absolutely. And here's the thing. And again, in my opinion only, because it's all theories, but if you've been carefully building those theories and opinions for 50 years, and you've actively been studying this, there's never been a long period of time in your lifetime where you weren't in some way researching, active in a case, actively having your own experience, trying to figure out what that was, studying the next thing, researching more, um, getting a hold of it, all the different um, big names out there where you kind of try to feel out what they're about, and you watch them over a couple of decades and see how they react to chaos and conflict and maybe bad press or rumor, or how did they handle money? Were they someone who got so big they're charging $350, to talk to them for 15 minutes or something? They have a very structured thing. And I'm not saying people out there aren't worth that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is when you spend that much time looking at people, you kind of get a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for, chat? Selective. And I don't mean that to sound snobby or anything, because I'm nobody. But I know a bullshitter. And I'm telling you, I know a paranormal bullshitter real quick. When somebody comes in here and says, all ghosts are made of green jello, and that wasn't your grandma. That was, how do you know? You weren't there. You see where I'm coming from? Like Steve says, and I miss you, Stockton. You hear me? You pack faster and don't pack the baby. And I got a wonderful card from them. So thank you, Nick. I got the card. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you got the gift. I hope everything fits Holden. Sorry about the tea. It's good tea. Paul Newman, Black Pico, with a little funny honey. Because it's my day off. I'm wearing my flannel. I got my little ghost hat, and I'm happy. Everything's going good today. But that's the main thing. And, I've been telling you about guests and stuff like that. And I get so disappointed when I get somebody on, and they, or start talking to them and they'll say something like that. And I'm like, I appreciate your opinion, but if that's like your main thing, I can't have you on to tell my guests, you guys would realize it, but what about the listener that's out there that just picks this up on Spreaker or picks it up, halfway playing on Rumble or X or wherever it may be playing, or on a radio show or whatever, and they just had an experience and they got comfort from it. Maybe they had, grieving a loved one and were having a hard time moving on in life. We saw that wonderful story, if you recall, of that young man, and I believe in Australia. I think it was from The Extraordinary, the television show. Great show. And he's walking along the beach, and he had been what he said his dad was calling a whinger. Now, I don't know, I'm not familiar with Australian slang, but the way he was describing it was like kind of like a goof off, like a, complacent, not going anywhere, just kind of wasting your time kicking around, no direction, no sense of urgency. My father would say to a son, pick a path and get on it, find out who you are, kind of thing. And he's grieving and he's having a hard time, and he's walking along the beach with this girl on a date, and all of a sudden these strangers are sitting around a fire, obviously just, a little guitar or whatever. And they walk by, and one of the guys hollers out to him. Hey, he calls him by name and says, "We've been waiting for you." He's like, "What?" He goes, "What the heck is going on? I don't know these people." Walks over, and one of the people there happened to be a channeler. Do you recall the story I'm talking about? And it's the woman, total stranger, it starts channeling his father with this profound message. pretty short but sweet, long for a channel or a message from the other side. It had a lot of information. I'm sorry I wasn't a better directed when I was alive. I'm sorry, your mother and I didn't get along better, or those kind of things. Sorry I wasn't there for you. But you need to move on, quit being a winger, or whatever they call it. I'm sorry, I'm butchering your language, Australia. Um, it was a profound moment in his life. I mean, why wouldn't it be, right? Thank you, Chris. Chris remembers. So then he's, like the host of the show said, this guy is long forgot about the girl because it was just this quick date. But he didn't forget the experience, and it did change his life. It was a pivotal moment in his life, and he set forth with a little bit more pep in his step, with a little bit more purpose, with a little bit more assurance that his father was okay, and his father really loved him, and he has apologized for maybe falling short in some of his dad duties. You know what I mean? So imagine this guy is just starting to get it together, and he's like, wow, maybe I should find some direction, get that job, maybe I should jump this way or jump that way, or focus on this, or maybe my school, whatever it may be. He turns on the radio, and he's hung up in traffic, whatever, he's paying attention. He catches this show where somebody comes on, and well, now we bring back foremost expert in the paranormal and supernatural. There's nobody better in these, blah blah blah, yada yada, big miss or Mr. um, paranormal pants, whatever you want to call them. And the radio host or whoever, says, hey, we got some questions from the audience. What do you think about channelers or messages from the other side and loved ones? Well, Peter, I'm a bit of a skeptic, and, I've studied this a long time, and I think all of that's bunk, complete, nonsense. And, there's no way that, anybody could come in from the other side, and especially strangers, they have tricks. They must have got his hotel card that he filled out, and by his license, they looked up his past and found out his father, some kind of nonsensical bunk that goes on to explain that this person knows this kid walking down the beach and knows the dead father, knows the channelers, knows all the things that happen, but says it in such a definitive way that it plays on the question in the young man's mind to begin with. Because he was questioning. It's like, what the heck was that? What just happened? And now with a little bit of truth, like, you should be skeptical. You can't just jump into these things. There are charlatans out there, blah, 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 all the good things, right? That, of course, you don't just, but hey, don't let a stranger tell you that what you felt and what you believed with your heart was some kind of psychosis or a trick. Again, I wasn't there. It could have been. But the way the story was portrayed, and the change in the young man's life, and the pep in his step, and the fact that he maybe was able to let go some of those big rocks in his pocket, in a big trench coat that we carry around in life, and let go some of those rocks in his pocket. And this guy just put him right back in and made him even bigger, because now he's not going to trust the next good thing that might happen, or the 1111 signal, or the license plate that has his dad's name on it when he's thinking about him, or whatever it may be. And I think that's a damn shame, and over the years, I've had many different people on the show and had many conversations. And like I said, for the first 10 years or so, or however long it was, I was able to edit, and I was interviewing, and then it just went out audio, and I could cut stuff out and go, oh, maybe I want to cut that. And a lot of people do that. I mean, they'll do 3 hours and they'll cut it to an hour, or they'll do an hour and they'll cut it to 20 minutes. Yeah, it is a damn shame, but it crushes that person, and they just move along, and they just drop these definitive bombs, these skeptical. And again, it's fine to be skeptical, but to somebody that's impressionable and looking for answers and looking for hope and trying to find that handle, just to hang on for just a little bit to get you over that bump in life, that rough part of the road. Hello, darling Lisa. And then somebody comes on very irresponsibly and says these definitive things. So again, if I've got people scheduled, be careful what you put on your social media. And your social media is filled with all kind of nonsensical, crazy madness. Now you can put whatever you want, but if I don't know you and you've been recommended to me and I've been like looking over your stuff and everything else, and you've got all these things that I know you're going to come on here and just, crush people, I can't control who's going to listen to it in a year. And I don't, and at this point in my life, I'm not interested in making money. I'm not, if there's one person out here listening, I'm doing this for. One person I did the show for last night. It's different. It's to put out there in the ether for that one person that needs to hear it, for that person needs to get something from it or have something answered. That's why I struggle so hard to try to look at 10 different ways to look at something, because you can go back and go, hey, we did a show on that. Let me go back and look. Let me go back and see, if maybe Abraham Lincoln was a vampire slayer. Cisco did 4 shows on that, 2 hours apiece. I bet you if he was a vampire slayer, she would have said so. If she had proof, if she had done a lot of research and came up that he was, she would have told us. Yeah, I would have. I'd have been all over that. But no. His mom died from milk poisoning. The cow ate some weeds that were poisonous. And her cousins, who lived probably a mile up the road in her farming community, got very sick. The whole family got sick from it. She went to stay with them to care for them out of kindness, not only her own family, but their family too. And she drank the milk, and she too got sick and died. So all those made up stories that they made movies out of and history books tried to tell you different things about Lincoln's mom. There it is. That's the truth. And it makes a lot of sense. Right? So the same goes for the paranormal. And that's why you'll see, I was talking to somebody, the reason I'm telling you all this is I was talking to somebody not too long ago. We were talking about paranormal conventions and setting up at paranormal conventions and the different groups that get together and the different draw of energy and different reasons people are there. And for the most part, most people just like to get together and talk about something they're all interested in, right? Excuse me. But there's groups and for different reasons. And again, I love them all. I can talk to anybody. But if you've got me at a table and you're asking me a question in a group and some guys at the end saying, hey, I hate to tell you, little, young lady, but that wasn't your grandmother, ghosts are made out of green cheese. So, hate to burst your bubble. I mean, how confused are you going to be by the time you're done with this convention going around the table and you're just looking for answers? If you're a hardcore and you can take this and you're strong in your beliefs and you can go in and you know how to battle and you're ready to debate if that's what you want to do, or just throw off bad information, it's no skin off of your ghost, right? But for people just trying to learn about this, there's so much garbage out there. And there's a lot of truth mixed in. Kind of like the JFK files. The JFK trial, the conspiracy, and the actual murder in Dallas. So there's a lot of confusion, a lot of, I think, on purpose, deflection of truth, a lot of making fun of people who say they've seen such a thing. We still get those titters and those giggles and things on the news programs about, oh, Johnny's going to go, spend time in the haunted house tonight. Ooh, wonder what he'll see, and that kind of thing. And joking and the laughing. And of course, you got to expect that. But if somebody's been in the paranormal for 40 years and comes and tells you that all car accidents get stuck where they are, no, you can't You can't lay something out there like that. You can't say all, you know, violent deaths are this, or all this type of thing happens, or agnostics just, wind up in the abyss of whatever. No, 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 no. That has not been my experience. Has it been yours, chat? Of all the things that you've learned, tell me if you agree with me. You can't kill energy, it just changes form. There's not sure what's on the other side, what's through the veil, if what's the afterlife is exactly like, but pretty darn sure we go on. Sometimes you can have psychosis that would cause you to have hallucinations. Sometimes you can have a mental illness that will do that. And sometimes stone cold, regular, all your faculties working and, firing on all cylinders, and walk smack dab into a full-on body apparition. You weren't expecting it. You weren't looking for it. It just happened. And then sometimes you get visitation from loved ones and pets and things like that. But pets don't have a soul, right? BS. One of the most beautiful, I would say, collaboration of information gathered over the decades is very wise people who have been in this for a very long time and have abilities amazing, in their field, on their track in this. And the combined information there is that if you reincarnate, so interesting, if you decide to reincarnate and you've been through a couple of lives and you go back on this one, the first thing that greets you, although it's not often mentioned because they seem to be, I guess, lost among the almost like lost among the feet of the people that come to visit you, and then people realize, that there's a dog or a cat or whatever there. Sometimes that's the first thing people see. Depends on you. It's an individual thing. But not only the pets from this life, but all the other lives. And they remember you because they remember and they recognize your soul and your energy, which I think very much coincides with those stories where we go back into the battlefields and, maybe the EVP that the person gets or picks up is speaking in familiar tones to this person, like they recognize them. We've heard great stories about that too. Your soul can recognize another soul, be drawn to that energy. It's mind-blowing, is it not? Yep, the Rainbow Bridge. So let's see what you guys are saying about it. Yep. What are you saying here, honey? Nope, I follow Celtic Christianity. There is no eternal. We all return to source. It might take some longer than others. And honestly, Vixen, to tell you the truth, if you back up and you look at this 40,000 feet view, that fits. It fits. It's just all in how we look at it. It's like when I started trying to learn about cryptids and elementals and things like that, and I didn't quite understand it. Aliens, you can throw everything in there. You don't quite understand about it when you back up and look and you think energy, vibration, frequency, again, source, it all fits. So there's really no, I think when you take the core, everybody, a large portion of people are right there. And, for whatever belief and stuff that you bring into it. When we start bringing in all the details is where we start to move away from each other and move away from that core. And that's fine. We're all supposed to take different paths, I believe. We're all supposed to explore different things. I'm not saying, that that's not true. But here's that, like I said, that's the thing. So all that being said, I just want to let you know I'm very careful and selective And that's not being snobbish. It's just a lot of people are popping crazy lately. They're having a lot of stress in their life. So, different colors that normally you wouldn't see are showing. And it's like a little wah. So you don't want to give them a little time to chill out, because you don't want to bring them on here on a live show and just have them start spouting crazy stuff. And then you got to hurt their feelings, or you got to, try to back out of it and go, well, that was a little nuts, but, tell us where to buy your book. You see, because I'm just not in the mood. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. And the number one reason is because I'm not going to spend all this time being so careful and then have somebody come on and just rip it apart, in one show and hurt somebody's feelings. I can almost feel the anxiety going out, So, can a portal what? Can a portal attack you? Seems like that happened to me today. A portal attack you? I don't know. I think that you could one could open up and you could walk into it. Those kind of things happen more often than you think. But attack you, I don't know what you mean. Can you clarify? Can you? Because I'm trying to picture what that would look like, and I can't. So maybe I'm just taking it wrong. Did it chase you? Was it, did it have teeth? And I'm not making fun. I'm just like, wow, that's just the visuals I'm getting on that are just insane. But I'm a little crazy. So, what do you mean, portal? And I think all that's important to bring out and put up there too. But like I said, when you back away from it, it makes sense. I think it's the reason I can say that so carefully. I mean, excuse me, that's not the right word. With trying to be so careful here. With such, I'm damn sure of it, is that the more I do it, the more I back up and look at everything fits in. Aliens, reincarnation, all of the things, from agnostics to atheists to pets to spirit guides, angels, miracle, everything wrapped up into one. It makes sense when we think of it's all connected. And in some cases, it's up to the individual, their experience, because they're still continuing their journey. And I don't think the journey ends when we take our last breath, if that makes sense. So others might have a different experience. Like some see a tunnel, some don't see a tunnel, some wind up in the unseelie fae in the in-between for a while. For why? For how long? Why do some get stuck here? Why did they decide to get stuck here? Or is it just such a jolt of energy? They're not really sure, and everything's just sporadic, and it takes them a minute to get their stuff together. Kind of like Mercury, when you spread it all out, it takes a bit, but it comes back and rejoins the globe, right? So I said all that just to let you know that, I could have called a lot of people to fill in tonight for Steve. Again, I'm reading books. I've got a lot of people I want on. They're just going through a lot right now, and they need to simmer and just work through it, because my main goal now for this year is to try to give light workers and people struggling and trying to understand with this change in consciousness, and also their pursuit in paranormal investigation. Again, not an expert in that, but I think I can speak on putting feeling back into it and working as a group and learning the history and taking the time and not jumping to conclusions. And, I think this is one show. I mean, I've seen a lot of shows, and again, this is not everybody's cup of tea. Don't want it to be. Not doing it for that. But I don't think anybody's ever taken a haunting and split it in so many different layers and tried to look at things. And then, I'll have people that I've known for years or whatever come through and go, that right there, I don't know about it. I'm like, well, tell me what you disagree with. Well, that could never happen like that. And I'm like, well, it has happened. There's like, 5, 6, 7, 8 incidents off the top of my head I can name. So how do you explain that? Oh, we have to agree to disagree. But I'm not here to hash it out with anybody or embarrass anybody or make anybody feel bad. But that's why you don't see a lot of, I don't have the people that think they're, really, I don't know, whatever it may be. Hey, hon, how you doing, Brian? So that being said, that's why I picked the subject for tonight is basically what do hauntings center around, and can the person be haunted? Well, we've spoken about that a lot on the show. Um, even kicked around the idea like, are the footsteps coming down the stairs of me from Tuesday? Is it just an echo in time, but, just very recent time? How do we know it's a ghost from another time? How do we go about deciphering that? How do we decide that? Do we jump to conclusions? Because somebody told us a story that, the maid that lived upstairs, unalived herself. And thank you, YouTube. I'll be so glad to have to stop being able to stop doing that. But upstairs, and they just jumped to conclusion. Oh, that must be, Sally Mae, who died upstairs, and now she's coming down the stairs because that's the route she always took when she did the laundry. She took. How do you know? You're guessing. You're filling in the blanks with ideas and thoughts, but you may be dealing with something completely different. This might be 1,000 other things. So how do you go about peeling back those layers so you're not jumping to conclusions and you're not going back after a case or after a situation that you've been through an experience and saying to yourself, okay, well, I heard the footsteps down the hall. It must be Sally Mae who died in the back room, whatever, 100 years ago. So it's okay. I'm sure she's not going to, I'm sure she wouldn't hurt the kids. I don't know how many times I've heard that, at the end of one of these big investigations on one of these big television shows that say, we're not picking up anything bad here. Everybody here's a good ghost, and, they're just going to commingle with you, and nothing's ever going to happen, and everything's fine. And we've been here for 2 hours. Sure of that. That's the kind of stuff I'm trying to get people to tap the brakes on here. Does this make sense? Okay. We're glad you're here for this. So that's the thing. And again, Vixen Doe, all I'm saying, is I think a lot of this is all true at the same time. I just think we have a different consciousness and we're accepting different information, and that doesn't make the information wrong or right. I think it makes it ours. But it doesn't take away the fact that we're all part of that light. Again, big, vast ocean. Take a bucket of water out of the ocean. Is it any less ocean? Now take a cup of water out of it. Is it any less ocean? Right? Take a handful, scatter it. Droplets everywhere. It's still a part of the ocean, even though it's going to change form and eventually evaporate, go into the air, and then turn into rain eventually and go back into the ocean. So that's how I look at it. And that always comforts me because it's always allowed me to pretty much bring in anybody who believed in that light that starts within us and is definitely connected to something else that is source. Once you go in a place of love like that, and of love and life and light, then they start bringing in their own colors and their own ideas. But it's going to come from a place where their consciousness, their belief, their culture, their experience, their journey, and where they are now. I think when we get to the other side, again, whatever that may mean, we tend to start to learn to understand the bigger picture, but I don't think we get it all at once, because I've talked to in several different situations, people that I would say are on different levels of consciousness, even over there. So that gives me the idea that we never really stop learning. And I think this is one of the hardest schools we go through. Does that make any sense? I hope it's all inclusive. I really do. And the only thing people I would say, or thoughts or beliefs I would say that don't belong in there, are the ones who maybe don't believe in anything, but in their own way, they're still included in that, because I don't really think you can separate yourself from it. If you know what I mean, it's just the experience may be completely different. I hope that makes sense. So that's why I thought to do this show tonight, because I found it very interesting to look at it in this light. So, have you guys ever heard of haunted people syndrome? When you say it like that, it sounds, very scientific, very proper, very clinical, but we've spoken about it many times on this show. So, how do you know the footprints coming down the stairs? Have you, Chris? The footsteps coming down the stairs aren't you. Well, we'd have to get into time slips and time is linear and all those things to try to explain that. Maybe quantum mechanics, quantum physics, quantum physics. But what if we look at this and break up a haunting? Because we've done anatomy of a haunting, we've done how a haunting starts, how to finish it, what to do in between, why it's happening, why is it happening that way. But if we look at haunted people syndrome as a possibility of one category, and I think there's many, and many we haven't even thought of hauntings. So are the people haunted? What do I mean by that? Basically, it is people-centric haunting. So it's centered around the person. And the HPS model, that's all we needed, was another acronym, right, in this business here. Model suggests that some people experience reoccurring supernatural encounters due to a mix of sensory sensitivity, stress, and belief in the paranormal. They brought it on themselves, in other words, yeah? These experiences might not depend on a specific location, but rather on the individual's perception and psychological state. Here's an example. The San Antonio case supports this. Now, this is one that got a lot of study, was a lot of people on this. I believe it was a couple of universities, and I know for sure at least one, that kind of went through it, much like if you saw the movie with us, The Entity, much like that kind of scenario where there was like a little group and everybody's working on it and their own expertise trying to sort it, right? The San Antonio case supports this. And I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. As this family's disturbances followed them across multiple homes, hinting that the haunting could be an internal or personal phenomenon applied by their environment. Now, it was one person. Is it a PK situation where it's one person with abilities and they're suppressing that energy, and the energy is just finding a way out and a way to form itself and a way to express itself? We know all these things are highly possible, very probable, especially in, as we all know, in young teens, especially young teen girls. Why? Don't ask Cisco. But it happens. And a lot can happen. Beds levitating, things flying across the room, bursts of things like drawers opening and silverware flying everywhere, that kind of burst of energy. And it can be controlled through grounding and learning how to control it, meditation, and guidance from good people. But I don't think that's what they're talking about here. I think what they're talking about here, especially in the San Antonio case, is this is a family that keeps trying to flee and it keeps following them. So I don't know the beginning of the case. I don't know if any of the people in the family ever had experiences before. And then when they got to a certain location, it really escalated because of the environment, because of the house, whatever it may be. Had an experience such as that in the farmhouse I was in, Stephen. I've talked about it many times. Did this stuff escalate because my dad moved in there with his personality and his energy? Was because there was a lot of teenage girls in the house? Was the house haunted before? Was somehow the energy playing off of each other? All those things, because it was like a perfect storm, right? What I'm talking about is the person is haunted. There's a lot of different ways of looking at that. And I think it's an interesting kind of lesson to do if you're doing, whether you're just interested in cases or you are doing paranormal investigation. I think it's an interesting way of looking at it. So here's another example. Now, the Bell Witch haunting, Tennessee, early 19th century. We talked about this with Steve. We've talked about it with Eric. There's a lot of people doing deep dives on this story and have for a very long time. Now, the Bell Witch haunting, one of America's most famous haunting, the Bell Witch case. Let me take that off of there because it's blocking my cars. How y'all doing tonight? Good? I hope so. Oop, oop, oop. Santa Claus. Where did Santa Claus? Did y'all just see Santa Claus? Out of nowhere, Santa Claus. You never know what you're going to get on this show. Okay. Yeah, we're good. We're cooking now. All right. Now, the Bell Witch case centers on the Bell family rather than just their home. In the early 1800s, John Bell and his daughter Betsy were tormented by a malevolent entity that spoke, physically attacked them, and seemed to follow them. The spirit, claiming to be Kate, targeted Betsy specifically with slaps, pinches, verbal abuse, suggesting a personal attachment to her rather than the location alone. Even after the family endured years of torment, stories persist that the entity lingered with descendants or visitors, hinting that it may have been tied to the people more than the land. Now, we can bring up bloodline curses. We can bring up, was it one thing trying to break up the family and just running through the weakest person in the room? Was it possibly the young person was going through some type of abuse? I know that in the movie they kind of hinted on that. In a lot of the stories, it seems to be John Bell that's the most tormented. So again, just as a reference, this is a good way to bring forth that a lot of people are thinking it may have been the people. So that's a family. What about one person? See, even though the family is affected. Now, here comes the San Antonio disturbances, and then I've got a little video for you. The San Antonio disturbances, now this is a modern case study, a clinical study. A clinical case documented in 2022 study titled The Case Study of Recognition Patterns in Haunted People Syndrome, published by Frontiers and PMC, describes a retired healthcare worker, her husband, and their daughter experiencing paranormal phenomena across 5 successive residences. They reported seeing apparitions, hearing voices, and feeling physical sensations like being touched, regardless of where they lived. Researchers proposed haunted people syndrome, HPS, suggesting that some individuals might be predisposed to these experiences due to the heightened sensory sensitivity or psychological factors, implying that haunting follows the person rather than being fixed to a place. Now, if I just left that there, people would go, Cisco just said no. What I'm saying is these few studies alone, these few mentions alone ought to tell you that you can't just jump into a haunting and assume it takes time. Like many of the friends that I've had on here and wonderful authors and wonderful paranormal investigators, paranormal researchers, and people with abilities will tell you it takes time. You really have to sort it because you can't just jump to conclusions. So if You didn't know that this family, and they didn't tell you that they've been in 5 houses and this is number 5 and they're still having problems and they're just over there. They're tired of talking to people. They're just needing help. And you come in and with your group or your whatever you're doing, your study trying to help, and you're trying to sort all this. And this thing is following them. If it is in fact a haunting and not a PK situation or something along those lines or psychological. But with this study, they worked through all that and got down to the point where this thing is just following this family. It followed the Smurls when the Smurls left, the famous, I think it was Long Island case, right? How many different cases can you think of where they left when they said the experiences continue? I mean, that was a scene and a half. If you ever watched the Haunted with me, I know we showed it and used it for a lot of different references. But that thing at the end where they move the house and everybody's happy and she puts the plane on the table and then all of a sudden she sees a thing in the corner, and again, that's what it wants to do to break you. Like you thought you had a speed, but you don't. And that just knocks your knees out from under you. That's when you get tougher and you go, okay, you keep going, you keep going. And most of the stories that we hear that went through severe cases like that, you cannot let up. And it's terrible. I think even in The Haunted, someone went up to Mr. Smurl and told him, "You're being tested." This was was it pastor, father? I think it was a priest that went up to him. And that did happen in real life. Where he went up to him and said, "Your family's being tested. You have to show how believers and people with faith go through something like this. You have to be a rock." Well, that stinks. That's like, I didn't want to be in the chapter of Job, you know, the suffering and the standing up and the keeping of the faith and all that. But don't we all do that in our own little ways? Think about it. But again, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So are people being tested? Are families being tested? You bet they are. It's called spiritual warfare. Wants to break up the family, wants to stop the love, wants to cause the fights, wants to have the husband doubt the wife doubt the husband, the kids hate the parents, wants to drive the dog crazy, loves all that, feeds on all of that. And again, that's not just, that could be a regular human being, essence of a human being, ghost, earthbound spirit that's just mean, was mean in life. I'll say it again. If you're an asshole in life, you are an asshole in death if you stay behind. You don't resolve any of that. That takes a lot longer to stay back and resolve it than it does to cross over and come back and maybe help or do whatever you need to do to work through things, say you're sorry, get forgiveness, do all that, and then go back and finish. And I know that sounds very definitive and just matter of fact, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. You may not be there. Your mileage may vary, and that's fine. But I think it's so interesting to look at a haunting that way and say, is the person haunted? Is it following the person? So again, what does that mean? So if you look at, and this is why I love being able to show the movies over on Rumble. So if you're not on Rumble, please get over there. And it doesn't cost anything. I'm not putting anything behind a paywall. I don't have any hidden agenda to take people over to Rumble other than the fact that it's free speech. I can show movies as long as I'm not making a dime. It doesn't even register views. We're just there to be together on a Tuesday night and watch a movie and talk about it and try to learn about ghosts, hauntings, and the like. Okay. I think last week we did white noise. That was a very good teaching moment because electronics can work both ways, for good and for evil. And sometimes they intermingle. And sometimes we can get obsessed. By being obsessed, other things can take control and manipulate us. And bad things can happen. And that's true. And it's good to learn that. It's not always pleasant to see, but we absolutely have to know it because both exist. Spiritual warfare. Same in The Ravine, Nefarious, Fallen. So many different movies that we've watched. but they're great references. Ghost, right? So how do people become haunted? Okay. Would you consider the young boy in Sixth Sense as a person who is haunted? Or are you looking at it more like he has abilities, and the abilities, for whatever reason, shine? His light is bright. His energy draws in spirits, especially earthbound. It seemed like most of his were earthbound spirits. There wasn't a lot of ascended beings visiting this kid. This kid had a low vibrational radar. Okay. It was people that had just freshly died, people that had something important they needed to say, a message they needed to give, or needed direction. Right? Extra abilities. Yep. So you wouldn't say that kid is haunted, or would you? Because that, if you would, that would be in the category of a person that's haunted. Right? Okay. To me, I wouldn't consider him haunted. I would consider him abilities drawing a haunting, and he's living a haunted life. But I don't think he's haunted. What I would consider that, and this is where we all may differ and may call it something different. It's fine, because it all comes out in the wash the same. Okay. So a person that is haunted is someone, I consider these bloodline curses, bloodline payments, which isn't exactly like a curse. It's more like this person 6 centuries ago did something to me. I'm owed. I'm here for payment. Okay. Different than a curse, but definitely a bloodline. So now that person's getting followed. That person constantly has that somebody's watching me Michael Jackson thing going on. Right? No matter where they go. To move, it might go dormant for a while and come back. It might, get elevated, escalated at a certain time, maybe when you're having troubles in life or whatever. But what about like the Bell Witch thing, where I mentioned that in a couple of the stories, and again, not an expert, you might go listen to an expert right after, this week or whatever, that's talking about the Bell Witches, dug way deeper than I've gone. But I'm talking about what we've been shown. It's John Bell being tormented. It's the young girl being tormented. And then they showed in the movie, I believe they had him, it was an incest thing, and he was assaulting her. And when I saw that, I went, okay, they're trying to bring that in, because here's the deal. This really stinks, but I find it to be true. And when that happens and there's that kind of abuse, and that negativity draws this negativity, and the negative ones show up, and you don't know what's going to hook on. It's like casting a net into the dark ocean. Might be all tuna and, God knows what else. Every once in a while, there's going to be a shark in there. Yep. All right, let me see here. I agree, not haunted as much as someone. Yep. Repeat what? Repeat what? Repeat. Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost was haunted by Patrick Swayze singing. Yeah, I think he was singing, I'm Henry VIII, I am. I'm Henry VIII, I am. Henry VIII, I am. Remember that one? I think that's what it was. I could be wrong. Remember the TV show with Chip Coffey? I love that. Paranormal Kids, I love that he was doing that. And that whole thing, I think there was a lot of bureaucracy behind that. Like it was his idea, and he was the promoter, and then he kind of like they took it out from under him or some kind. That always seems to be the way. I mean, even though I really liked the way they did Ghost Whisperer, and I loved the chick who played the part. She was really good at that. She did those cute little things with her face and wriggled her nose and stuff. You just kind of, she's very expressive. But I thought she was sweet. don't tell me if you know any bad stuff about her. I've lost so many stars and stuff. I just don't want to know anymore. I'm all full up. But that one started with James Van Prague and, oh gosh, she's a terrific medium. I think her initials are SW, but I could be wrong. I will not remember her name. But anyway, they took a really good couple of people with fantastic abilities. And I think somewhere halfway through the first episode, they started throwing in stuff in there for, for looks and interest and to keep everybody happy. And by the time, the second or third season came along, although wonderful to watch and fantastic stories, wonderful cinematography and terrific writing, it was really ticking off the consultants, let's put it that way. We're going, yeah, that didn't happen and it wouldn't happen like that because this is in this. And it just went off the rails. But it was still a good story. But it was based on real experiences, not exactly real experiences. Although I have to admit, there's probably a lot more truth in that show than most, Ghost Whisperer. So if you like that, just feel free, watch and enjoy. Thank you, Chris. Something like that, yeah. It's a hard question, but man, it makes you think, doesn't it? It's very intriguing to start peeling it back like this. Here's another one. Do you remember? I think it was the San Antonio case. We've seen the video a couple of times on here, where they went in. She was haunted. The camera crew starts going up in the attic, and the guy gets hung by some like clothes line or something that was up there, and he dropped his camera and all that stuff, and he was choking. They said that everywhere she went, it followed her. Here's another one. We just saw the movie, The Entity. The Entity was based on a real story, and I think I have a write-up on that. If I loaded it, let's see if I did. Just a little bit, just to give you a couple of paragraphs. Yes, Doris Bither. Okay, I'll read you a little bit of this one. This is from Horror Galore. I picked up as Pennywise. Boy, I'll tell you what. I hate to admit it, but that was a decent movie. It's a great book. I was 9 months pregnant when I read that. I had to ride out a tornado in an underground thing. If there had been a red balloon at that point, I would have lost everything. I probably would have had the baby right there. Anyway, Doris Bither and the real story behind the movie The Entity. And I remember telling you guys in the chat when we watched it that this was a real story, and Barry Taft was involved in this. It was a big deal. So it happened in 1974. And it was a chance encounter at a California bookstore in 1974 that would eventually reveal one of the most terrifying hauntings in American history, although you don't hear much about it. The case, which was used as the basis for the film, The Entity, involved a woman named Doris Bither and her 4 children. 4. Bither was the woman at the bookstore who overheard 2 men discussing a haunted house and approached them to say that her house was also haunted. Although unknown to Doris Bither at the time, one of the men was Cary Gaynor, whom I did Cary Gaynor. I like him, and a paranormal researcher and associate of Dr. Barry Taft from the UCLA. So he goes back and tells Barry. Barry goes, and then pretty much that played out about right in the movie. Doris Bither had moved to California with her family at about the age of 10. Little is known about her early life, but by the time she spoke with the investigators in 1974, her life was falling apart. Bither was a single mom in her 30s, had 4 children, 1 girl and 3 boys by 4 different fathers. Was an alcoholic and suffered from serious emotional problems. Bither appears to have endured one abusive relationship after another. Now, Doris and her children were reportedly being assaulted by a trio of violent entities. Dr. Taft and his associates had serious reservations about Bither's claims, considering her numerous personal problems. However, after considering all factors involved, Dr. Taft decided to visit the Bither home to access the situation. And it goes on and on. But I wanted you to hear that part, because what did I say about the Bell Witch? And how many other stories do you hear about a severe case such as this? And if you're not familiar with the case, Doris Bither was being actually raped. There goes YouTube. By these entities, 3 of them, 1 large and 2 small, because you could tell by where the handprints and the bruises were on her body. It beat the heck out of her kids. It broke up her. I think she was about to get married. I think she had a serious boyfriend at that time, probably one of the best ones she had had. Was coming out of bad situation, really trying to pull her life together after everything. But as a child, she was abused by everybody. I don't know whether she went through the foster system or not. But unfair as it may be, it seems to be true that more and more cases that are that severe and draw in these. I'm going to say I've read the book, I read the case study, I've listened to Barry Taft speak about it and several others, including her. And I'd have to say that this is one of those cases that are similar to the Bell Witch. If there was some abuse there, it makes perfect sense, because that's when these SOBs show up, because they're feeding off that negativity, that loosh. And it's so unfair. It's one of the most unfair things that, you can uncover with this energy, and you think, my gosh, the person's been through enough. Why would there be more piled? That's not a fair rule. Have more piled on top of you. But when you back up and you look at it, negativity draws negativity. And the only way to break that is light and love. And when somebody's caught in that circle of that abuse and that darkness, you've got nothing but churning out that negativity, and it just creates more and creates more and more and more. And once you realize that, you understand why in all these movies and all these stories, the Ravine, Nefarious, the Smurls, you name it, what's the number one thing they say? Like attracts like. Don't break up the family unit. Don't come apart. Love is your weapon. Light is your weapon. Faith is your weapon. Don't let it break you apart. It's so difficult because it plays on you like that. And when it hits these single people, like Doris Bither, she didn't have that. She just had the love of her children and her belief in her children believing her, because they were seeing it. This is also what Bill Bean went through, similar, with his family and his mom. And at 11, he was the strong one in the room that was battling this thing, and he's still battling similar today. So when you think about it like that, it makes so much sense. Can the person be haunted? I'm going to say, I believe so. Because I don't think that house or wherever she was had anything to do with it. And it did follow her wherever she moved. Although it diminished, the attacks diminished, I don't think it was so much the moves that did that. I think it was her strength and how she learned how to battle. Yeah. And the more help she got, the more love and support she got, which helps fight it. We saw that again in Poltergeist, right? Interesting. Very interesting to look at. Let's see what we got next. I think this is where I get to show you a video. Oh, I do. So let me take this one down and go back a minute, because I have right here. This is a great example. And I know we saw it, I want to say about 5 years ago I showed it. So if you've been with me that long, you've probably seen this one, but it's worth a repeat. This one, try to remember the name of the show. I think it was The Unexplained. Retro, not really retro, maybe early 90s that this was out, but it was a good show. And this is a small one of the stories from it. And it is based on basically what we just spoke of. A family that's haunted, or in this case, the mom, the woman, is the one where she seems to be the catalyst for it. And then she's having children, and one of the children seems to move over to one of the oldest girl. And I'm wondering, in her case, this one flip-flops me back, because I think it's a combo. I'll save it to the end because I want to see what you guys think. In this case, I think it's a combination of a few things. But for sure, hey, Bobby McKinley, how you doing, sweetheart? Good to see you, baby. Hope you're doing well. Everything is popping. Yep. Love you. Everything is popping. Why not you, right? Good to see you, sweetheart. Love the bacon. Thank you for the bacon. Um, so that's what I'm thinking. That this one is a combo. So let's watch it, and you tell me what you think, and I'll put the comments up in between. So definitely put your thoughts out there. But this one's a nice. This story takes its time, and it really puts a lot of detail in there, as well as the effects on the family afterwards. And I can tell you for a fact that this did follow them. I hate to be a spoiler alert, but I'm going to tell you the end. This one followed them, and it continued for a long time. I even researched in it to see if it followed the kids as they got older, but it seemed like they were able to drop it off there. Hey, Sarah Claire, how you doing, sweetheart? You on a bus? You doing good? Hope you're not on a bus. I hope you're home with your feet up. Let's take a look.
For some who say ghosts haunt their lives, relief comes when the spirit leaves or the victims depart. For others, no house can be a home. For these families, there is no respite and no escape. A painful divorce in 1968 left Beth alone with a small child and little money. She was rebuilding her life when she met Bob Batesel a few years later. They fell in love, got married, and Bob adopted Beth's daughter, Leah. In 1971, when the Batesels moved into this two-family house in New Brunswick, New Jersey, the young family's newfound happiness would be fleeting. Strange events began happening in the house. At first, Bob and Beth dismissed the odd activity. Lamps swinging, doors opening and closing, objects appearing in the wrong places. Then they were forced to confront the terror trapped in the walls of their new home. The pungent smell of rotting flowers wafted throughout the rooms. Temperatures supposedly rose to sweltering levels for no apparent reason. They began to witness shocking sights. Knives, forks, and baby bottles darted about the house, making them fear for their lives.
I felt very scared, unsafe, undermined. You didn't know what was coming next, and that's a very undermining feeling of never knowing that the ground or the rug is being pulled out from under you. So you didn't know what to expect, so you were always aware. So the stress level was very high.
The ghastly events escalated. The Batesels claimed they were attacked by small objects hurled about the house by unseen forces.
I had some friends over for lunch, and just out of nowhere, the bathtub stopper, a round bathtub stopper, just came flying between two of us that were seated at the table as though someone just threw it.
The moving objects became even more threatening. One night, Bob and Beth were paralyzed with fear as they watched a lit cigarette drift down from the ceiling.
We just didn't know what to do because
And that's just that.
we didn't know whether
Steve
to
has
reach
a
out and
story
grab
like
it.
that.
If someone were actually holding it that we just didn't see.
At porting.
If it hit the floor, would it start a fire? We just didn't know what to do.
The enormous stress from incidents like
crazy.
this forced Beth, who had never believed in ghosts, to confront what seemed very much like a haunting. Word of the Batesels' ghost spread, and a spiritual group interested in paranormal activities asked to conduct a seance in their home. Bob and Beth, at a loss for an alternative, agreed.
We felt we were drowning in a sea of phenomena that we could not explain. We had never had this before, we didn't know anything about it at the time, and we needed help.
The group gathered with Beth and Bob around the dining room table. They closed their eyes and joined hands. When the psychic called out to the spirits, the ghost began to speak through her. Beth secretly taped the proceedings.
Can you tell us your name?
It's my land. And you get out.
Well, if we could investigate to see if it is your land, maybe we would get out. But you have to help us and tell us what your name is.
My name is George Baxter.
George Baxter?
This land belonged to me. I bought it in the year 1872. Now you look that up, mister.
We will, George.
I want to stop that real quick. You guys are saying great stuff in the chat, and I'm starring them, and I'm trying to save them up. This validation here, again, this is very similar to Sybil Leek with Holzer, and I love the Holzer fires too. And I've talked to Dave about that, and everybody respected, Holzer. I love that they're going back to check old cases, and the thing is shows like things tied up with a little bow, and you can't always do that, and you don't want to assume stuff. The medium on that seems to be pretty thorough. I don't know her, so one way or the other. But again, when you're on a show, you have to take that into consideration. I loved what Hans did, and I love what's happening here, because what they're getting is some validation that they can go and look up. Now, what does that mean? Okay, because they can go look it up, and they can see whether or not this ghost possibly coming through, channeling through this trans medium and giving this information. Is this the ghost that's causing all the problems? Is it the ghost that follows them? Is it the ghost that's writing on the walls, which you'll soon see? You can't just say, unless there's a medium there, a sensitive there, even if he's telling you, yeah, I'm doing it, is he telling you the truth? These are my questions. Even something as powerful as this, it's only going to give you the facts that you heard and the validation that you heard. But we can't jump to conclusions that this is the ghost that's doing everything. This might have just been the one that was able to have the energy to speak and come through this trance medium. Does that make sense? It doesn't wrap everything up in a tight little ball.
The next day, Beth went to the New Brunswick Library to research the history of the house. She discovered a George Baxter had bought the land in 1872. Beth was stunned, but Bob remained skeptical until a few weeks later, when they found threats written in lipstick and marker on the walls and mirrors. Now Bob was certain that his house was haunted. The angry ghost became brazen, scribbling harrowing messages to the family. What you see here are the actual notes that Bob claims were written by the ghost. As the alleged hauntings escalated, the Batesels could no longer keep their 8-year-old daughter safe from the ghost.
Well, I knew something was going on. You'd have to be an idiot not to know something was going on when on your 8th birthday you wake up in the morning and there are red crosses all over the walls and the words "Go Dead" written.
In 1972, Beth gave birth to their second daughter, Lisa. The threat to both children loomed larger. According to Leah Batesel, by that time the ghost had already done irreparable damage to her childhood.
So much stuff in the 70s, right?
It is a hell house. It's the house from hell. As far as I'm concerned, that house destroyed what prior to moving in there was a normal 4-year-old girl. I hate that house.
Beth grew to hate the house too. She knew her daughters were frightened, and she felt that she had no way to protect them.
When you touch my child, that's the line. And that's what happened. There were a number of incidents couple in particular that were very, very focused on our children, and we felt that that was it and we had to leave.
Unwilling to do battle with their ghost any longer, the Batesels packed up all
It's
their
a great
belongings
question.
and
I would have to
moved,
say it
certain
depends
they were leaving
on
the
the spirit,
violent spirit behind.
because I've seen
Their
both,
desperate attempt to escape
and I've used both
only took them deeper into the
at the
mystery.
same time.
Bob and Beth Batesel and their 2 young daughters fled their home in New Brunswick, New Jersey, believing they were escaping the terror of the ghost that haunted them there. For 4 years, the Batesels lived in this house, where they were harassed almost daily by ghostly threats. Now they were searching for a more peaceful abode. The Batesels moved to an apartment in Clinton, New Jersey. The persistent ghost followed and only became more hostile. The Batesels claimed that an unseen force shoved Beth, Bob, and Leah down the stairs. They moved again. This time they moved further away to Flemington, New Jersey. They had barely finished unpacking when one morning, to Beth's horror, she found a butcher knife impaled in the kitchen door frame. She knew then they had not eluded the vicious spirit.
Once again, we moved into a new place, hoping that the
Now you're going to think I'm nuts. Go ahead, it's okay. So I have a thing in my family, the people that know me, is when you're moving, you sage the boxes, you do protection prayer and everything you put in the boxes, you put it outside, you sage them again, you sage the truck, you do the thing, do all the things. Because you're not sure which one's going to work. You can kind of feel it. But again, if you're leaving and it's following and it has that hook in you, you got to see where the hook is, who put the hook there, how it got there, and how to get it out. Because if this is a bloodline thing, if it's a, like I said earlier, something that this spirit or entity thinks it's owed, or you've done something to it where it's retaliating because you challenged it, you welcomed it, you called it, you brought it in, you I'm thinking about the portal that was, again, that came up in the comments. So I'm wondering about that, because I think that there can be things like that. Places, Skinwalker Ranch and mirrors and in the middle of nowhere, in the water, walking on a path in the woods, in the mountains, sour soil just over the ridge. So all of those things are possible. But in this case, I have personally been involved in several cases where I had to join a group of people, light workers, say, that all had their own specific talents. You're asking me, do they respond to native prayers? Do they respond to, a voodoo prayer or a Catholic prayer or, whatever it may be, Methodist over whatever. I think where it comes from is your belief, your faith, and how strong you are in it. In some cases, and I've stated this before, there are certain things that only one thing will work on, whatever that one thing may be. Recent case, Lynn has been on here talking about her elemental issue. The first thing I got when she started speaking on it, what I pulled off that energy is she's got to get the local native tribe that is connected to that land and get their person, their medicine person, whoever, their shaman, their leader, to come in there and do a cleansing and do a what was I getting? It was very specific. It was basically an apology and set up a barrier where this is our place, this is yours, we'll respect yours, you respect mine. Remember me telling you all about that? Kind of like you think about with the Bigfoot, people that coexist kind of thing, and the giving rock and all that. I knew immediately. So you could have gone in there and, gone off with banging gongs for Buddhism and Omen and all that other stuff. Would it have worked? I can't tell you that. Would it have backed it off? Would it have weakened it? Probably. But you want to use the right tool for the job. Does that make sense? Okay. And I was in there with this group, and everybody was doing their own thing. We had 2 people that were doing voodoo. I was bringing, I was bringing the native. We had 2 white witches and a green. And I know we had one there that kind of leaned more toward chaos magic. And the person that was in the main middle of the circle was trying to help this woman get a really, really bad sticky energy off of her. I mean, it was just draining her. Probably killed quite a few people in her family. But it had been on that whole family bloodline for like 6 generations. And it was an awful story that started it. So those things do exist. And this was the 3rd time that, she had done this. And she came and got me, and some other people said, look, I need you. Your job is to keep everything out of the circle, because it was all these entities and these earthbound spirits that were trying to come in and get involved because they wanted a piece of this energy. And she was in a very weakened state. And the person performing you could basically say an exorcism on this woman was also going to be in a weakened state, because she was going to be very focused on that. She needed a lot of protection in that circle. And it was a very strong energy that we had to hold back, and everybody had their job. We all did it. So there was a story, one story of combined with a lot of different beliefs and a lot of different spiritual paths that came together to help one. And nobody ever asked the lady in the middle of the circle that I know of, not that night, what was good for her. She just wanted it off. And that night we almost lost the woman that was performing that, because she kind of almost got stuck half in and half out. It was crazy. But it took all of us to get her back out, but we got her, because you don't give up on somebody like that. You keep going until you can't. So that'll give you an idea. Let's get this started again.
Phenomena was over, and it would have stayed far behind us, and we could just pick up where we always were, trying to be a normal family.
From 1971 to 1985, Bob and Beth moved 11 times, and their lives were anything but normal.
We lost friends because we couldn't explain anything, and everybody was looking for an explanation. Everybody would blame us. It's happening to you, therefore it's your fault.
With no one to turn to, they united to battle their demons. They built their last house from the ground up in Lake Ariel, Pennsylvania, hoping the fresh start would finally eradicate the ghost. It didn't. The first weekend after moving into the Lake Ariel home, a ghost left the Batesels a most horrifying welcome. It was well past midnight when the Batesels were startled out of bed by hysterical crying. Rushing to their daughter's room, the Batesels found her terrified, screaming that her cat was hanging by its neck from the doorway with its eyes gouged out. The Batesels saw nothing. This ghost-like apparition had disappeared. Several nights later, the Batesels were again startled out of their sleep, as the glass in picture frames hung in the living room spontaneously exploded, shattering glass throughout the house.
It's really difficult to describe how you feel when you're in the middle of a whirlwind. But we have stopped asking why, because we're too busy dealing and living with it.
Most reports of hauntings link the ghost to a place. The Batesels believe that in their case, ghosts come to them.
We have come to understand that there are hauntings which are attached to a particular place and remain. And then there are hauntings that seem to be the people. The people are haunted, not the place. So no matter where the people go, it doesn't matter. They will still be haunted. from everything that has been done and tested and what we've been told, I seem to have some kind of presence. I am some kind of magnet that seems to attract these spiritual things.
The Batesels, physically and emotionally exhausted, say they can no longer try to escape the ghost. They remain in their Lake Ariel home, resigned to its hauntings and uneasy about what may lie ahead. Do the Batesels somehow attract hauntings and spirits wherever they live? Or do they create their own demons? For scientists like Nobel Prize-winning physicist Leon Lederman, the answer is simple.
I would just flat out say, you don't have haunted houses. You have either some gullible people or some dishonest people who are making us all up. Science has no room for ghosts.
Psychologist Karl Schlotterbeck has found room for ghosts. He investigated the Batesel stories, came to support the family's claims, and joined Beth Batesel in co-authoring a book about her experiences.
I became a believer fairly quickly. You could walk through the house and feel in different rooms. In one room it was difficult to breathe even. And recordings made in that room were fainter than they were in the rest of the house. In other places you could feel things in the air.
Schlotterbeck believes the Batesels found ghosts at each of their households because the entities were attracted to certain inviting qualities in Beth Batesel.
One investigator referred to her as an undeveloped psychic, perhaps. Other people have just referred to her as a magnet, that her warmth and her caring about people actually extends into the other world, and that lost souls who haven't crossed on find her a warm and comforting presence to be around.
Lederman points out that none of this is scientifically verifiable. The scientific method demands much more than impressions and feelings to validate a claim.
To claim that I see this, I have to prove it. The burden is on the owner of that site or the writer of the book. And in 400 years of innumerable claims, no one has ever succeeded in convincing the scientific community.
Parapsychologist Lloyd Auerbach finds proof in the Batesels' reports of objects floating and moving through the air. He says that when some people are under stress, their energy can levitate objects. It's a phenomenon called psychokinesis.
Psychokinesis is the ability that we have identified in parapsychology of the mind to directly affect matter or energy, to move things. There's usually a living person there whose mind, or subconscious mind typically, is letting off steam or reacting to stress and is using psychokinesis, mind over matter ability, to move those objects around.
Let me stop here. Now, don't jump on me if you love Lloyd. I don't dislike Lloyd. I have been watching Lloyd for decades. I've had people jump, studied under him and this is, and it's not. No, hang on a minute. Tap the brakes. What I'm saying here is listen to what just happened. What did she say? That cigarette came through the ceiling, lit, slowly drifted down, hovered around the room, and eventually, I don't believe she said what eventually happened. Did it hit the floor and they stomped on it, put it out? Did it disappear? I don't know that I ever heard what happened to the cigarette at the end. I do remember hearing what happened from the beginning. So if she's telling the truth and she's recalling correctly, this is an apport. This isn't a psychokinesis. If the cigarette lifted out of the ashtray, and I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, and then kind of went around the room and slammed against the wall or something like that, I would say PK, highly possible. And again, I'm no expert. I'm not saying I am. I don't even play a psychologist on TV. I am a paranormalist, whatever the hell that means. Okay. But Again, facts are facts. So this is what happens in the paranormal. This is what happens in the JFK investigation. This is what happens in any conspiracy where there's a little bit of truth and a lot of, intentional lies, accidental misunderstandings, theory, personal opinions. All this gets involved. And everybody who's asked to speak is going to put forth what their belief is and what they stand in and what they're promoting. And none of that is wrong, because what he's saying is correct. But the way this is edited, and again, no fault of anybody. I don't know that it was any nefarious intent. I'm not implying that. I'm saying that's how easy it is to get something wrong. And if you go on this as a paranormal investigation without further research and digging in and trying to understand how this was edited and how they're taking stuff out of context, although there is a lot of truth in the statement he just gave and absolutely agree with it, go back to what he's telling you about. Where did that cigarette come from? Because there's nobody, PK, that I know of that can create a lit cigarette out of thin air, drag it through however thick the ceiling is. I don't know what's above. I don't know if there's an attic, I don't know if it's just the roof. Where'd the cigarette come from? Is it a magician's trick? Well, they're not saying it's a magician's trick. They're not saying she's an illusionist. They're saying that she has PK and held back energy and abilities that she has learned to use, and she's probably a budding. I get all that. All that's true. But that damn cigarette, you see what I'm saying? Because there's other cases. There's the boy that made it rain in the cell with the cell doors locked. And it's raining in his cell, and he could do this at will. And he was under the control of a very strong earthbound spirit. It was just a nasty human being that learned how to do some tricks, like in Ghost, like the guy on the subway. Yeah. And when he got angry, things happened. But to me, this is an apport, and that's a totally different thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if he had been saying a statement that all the drawers in the kitchen suddenly opened up and, the spoons and forks started dancing around in the air, like that scene in Cabin 22 where the tackle box opens up and all the bobbers start dancing in the air one at a time and fly all over the room, I would say that could be PK. But, your mileage may vary.
Laboratory study after study has tried to find evidence for psychokinesis and hasn't found it.
And I don't agree with Nobel Prize winner guy either. I mean, it's so easy. So it's almost disgusting how people can just throw stuff off like this. But I've dealt with people like this all my life. My brother was a mechanical engineer. I mean, we'd sit there and have all debates. It was wonderful. It was fun. You exercise your mind doing that. But for somebody to come out and just broad brush stuff like that because it's not proof in front of them, being the fact that this was done in, I think, early 90s and it's 2025 now, and he looked a little long in the tooth at the time he did this, he probably has more answers than he did doing this show at this point in time, and I mean no ill will towards anybody, but I'm just saying he's probably closer to getting more answers at this point, because I don't think, I think those are one of the most surprised people that go over and go, wow, really? This is amazing, and I think those are some of the coolest stories. So it's his journey. Let him cook.
The eyewitness reports of something moving from
I didn't
here to
mean like
there
that, not like
are very
hellfire.
unreliable.
That's not what I'm saying.
Many scientists think psychology offers the best explanation for the happenings at the Batesville household.
Oh my God.
Psychologist and retired Professor Robert Baker says that in over 50 years of investigating claims of hauntings, he's found ghosts in only one place.
In the human mind. It is an invention of the human mind, and they have invented ghosts because ghosts provide a great deal of psychological satisfaction to the people who believe in them. It fills a gap, a void in their lives.
Finucane suggests it may be easier for Beth to confront imaginary ghosts than face real issues.
Ghosts can be used by particular members of the family for their own purposes as a method of self-defense, if you like, psychological self-defense, when things are going badly in the rest of the family's existence. Perhaps this is a way of seizing upon some degree of certainty for those people involved or those individuals involved. Perhaps this is a way that Mrs. Batesel, in her own case, chose to solve some of her dilemmas as they arose in her family.
Are the more than 20 years of the Batesels family's supposed hauntings the work of active spirits or an overactive imagination? Skeptics and scientists point to the lack of compelling evidence for the Batesels' claims. Believers note simultaneous
like
sightings
PK
of
stuff.
ghostly events
Could be.
and knives driven into door frames. And they see the work of the unexplained.
Absolutely. That's it, Catherine. And, yeah. Such a pretty song. The song is called Nefarious. They most certainly can be. And I'll save our little ghostly adventures. I know you guys love those as much as I do. And this is a really good story to end it on. So I'm going to save that one. We've got a few minutes here. I want to try to catch up. We should be good. We should be good. But absolutely. And you guys are saying so many great questions. So I wanted to answer, Catherine, I think it was you. Forgive me if I'm wrong. But you were asking, I thought, and it's, again, just my opinion, of if it's a curse or a gift. To have abilities, I believe you're asking. And I believe it was somewhere around the time we were talking about the boy in the Sixth Sense. I know a lot of people that have that. They had it, lived through it, tried to deal with it, tried pills, tried alcohol, lots of different roads. Some got through it through meditation and faith and other things and combinations of all those things. Good Lord, not all at the same time. But so if you ask those people, they would say it was a curse. I think even people with small or a small amount of ability in a certain direction, say, for example, Greta, the fictional character in my book, Cabin 22, in my story, Cabin 22. She speaks on that. And I think I put what I believed really in that through her eyes and how she would react to it, being the kind of person she was. And what her ability was, she would have dreams. And she would have prophetic dreams. She would speak out loud sometimes, and she would talk in her sleep. And her husband was very understanding and would listen. And most of the time he was upset more that it was going to upset her because she never remembered these trances. It was kind of like a trance also while she was asleep, kind of half and half. But I know people like this, and when they see an accident in a construction scene or something along those lines and see a bunch of people get hurt or killed, and they try to drive themselves crazy finding it, or a plane crash or a bus or a bridge or whatever it may be, or even a loved one that's in trouble or somewhere along those lines, or somebody they know or maybe not know. That's even worse. They both have their pitfalls, You'd rather it be a stranger, but then you're trying to fight to save a stranger and you have to do, what can you do? I mean, I've known people that have called airports and fought with people and said, I got the tail number. I know this, it's going to do this, and this is what happens. And, I know mediums that have fought and gone and sat and interrogated in police stations because they knew where the body was, because the dead chick sitting next to him told her. And wouldn't leave her alone till she came and did this. And now she's caught between a ghost and a jail cell. It's happened, folks. More often than you know. On top of, sorry, I got cat hair. So many. It's part of being a mom. So, to answer your question, that is a long way around and a loop-de-loop, kind of like we're caught on a cul-de-sac there for a minute. But I think that's what it feels like to have these abilities, because you really don't know. If you could do something with it, great. And that's what Greta was going through. If I could just do some good with it, but what good does it do me if I see these things and cannot stop them? Yeah. Or these things, but nobody will listen. And at the same time, it's draining you of your energy. Famous case, actually went to court highly provable. You can go back and research it. There was a couple that she, I believe, was a nurse. I believe they knew each other at a hospital. Two people worked in a hospital. Yeah, it's a hospital. The girl is going to get her TV fixed. So this orderly, I believe it was, arranges to go to her apartment, fix her TV. It's big Zenith model, floor model type deal. Okay. There's an apartment. I think it was New York or Chicago, one of those. And he kills her. He fools her. He gets her, horribly abuses her, all the things. Kills her, I believe, chokes her out for some wild reason, drags the mattress off her bed, puts the mattress over top of her, sets the mattress on fire. Goon as well as a monster, right? Just idiot. And in order to cover up his tracks, right? And then leaves. And she's got, I think, if I remember this correctly, I think she had in her appointment book by her phone a small note, something along the lines of, help me, Chad, if you know the story, TBKC or something along those lines. But that's all they had. The fire didn't take her out. They were still able to, retrieve the body. It didn't burn down. I don't know how. I guess it just went out. So the evidence is there. But it was a cold case. It got stopped. So one of the ladies that worked with her, I believe, lived in the same building or whatever, maybe not, starts having these prophetic dreams. She's talking in her sleep, secrets that you keep when you're talking in your sleep, right? So the husband, very much like my Greta's husband, just listens, doesn't try to wake her up, because that's always the worst thing to do. He's learned over time, and he's listening, and she's telling the story. And this poor dead girl, I think was a nurse or whatever, that got killed, is coming through this woman because she has abilities, and she knows her. She knows her from work. And I think this was a story on Unsolved Mysteries or one of those. But she winds up giving all the facts. The woman and the husband, fight, feeling stupid, and go down and persist with the police until they listen. And it actually winds up in court, and they wind up catching the dude, if I'm not mistaken about that. So yeah, double-edged sword, absolutely. So, and it depends on what you do with it too, and how much it drains you. Like, ask Amy Allen. I mean, she'd go on these cases that people laugh at on the show. I mean, it just makes me sick, because you don't know what she goes through in the background. I do, I got a good idea, and I've heard her tell me, I wasn't there. But, she's got to fight with these people that own the property. She's got to, what is their agenda? What is their narrative? Why is she there? She's got the other guy who, I have nothing against him, the cop with the ring and I do my part. I go and I look and I talk to the other cops, and I look at the stuff, and I get the things, and I go in there, and I get the pictures. And then she says, is this what you saw? And, he'll pull out the stuff, and then they got to explain it to the family. Listen, all those some of those reveals at those sitting at those tables, 12, 14, 18 hours. And then they cut it all up. She's there maybe 5 days, 3 days minimum, walking the property, doing the things, covering pictures, uncovering pictures. I'm making light of it, but it's not funny. And probably, I'd say at least, 3 out of 10 of those puts her in a hospital. She gets sick, she has to stay home for weeks trying to deal with it, and then dealing with the residual. Is it attacking her now? I mean, you hear her get real brave. She says, I'll just take her home with me because we got to work through some stuff, and we got some therapy we got to do, and then we'll move her on. But this one, you got to do this, and you get the black salt, and you got to get a male, medium to come in here and give it what for, and then you've got to get a female, something or other, to come in here and cleanse the property, and then you have to do the upkeep. That's what you see. But it could be weeks. And we think we can go in to a place where the entire family is sleeping in the living room floor, and they've been doing that for months. They've begged their church for help, their family for help, read books. They've done all the things, and they're just at their wits' end. And, somebody comes in there and says, look, we're going to try to get information for you here and whatever. And then they sit down at the table, and through this trance medium comes this information that you can then go to the library and look up, and it's for real. And then you'll have these people that know, that are coming from the college or in your group that's a skeptic, that'll start saying, she probably went and looked that up and then came in here just to say. And then again, your hope, and you're knocked off track again, your knees are knocked out from you, and this just continues and continues. And the only thing that's really benefiting from all this is the stinking negative entity, or human spirit, that whether knowingly or unknowingly is draining you of this energy and feeding on this turmoil and creating more of it, because it's good and it's delicious and it tastes great and they need more of it. And isn't that what draws evil? Isn't that what runs evil? More power, more control, more money, more stuff, more things, and it just keeps going. More power, more. And that's what evil runs on. And the suffering and the confusion and the killing of a spirit, the killing of a love, the taking of a soul in some cases, a bargaining or whatever, or the little yeses. Yeah. Long Island medium. I don't know too much about her. I've heard more good than bad. For what that's worth. I think she's very talented. Say what you will about her doing the show and the family and the soap opera and the hair and the nails and the whatever. That's Long Island, baby. It's personified right there. For what it's worth. But yeah, she's very talented. My I'm a Kim Russo girl. I like Kim. I think she's spot on. I think she's good. I think she has the right intent, and I think that's why she's so successful in what she does. And a lot of she's very much in that love vibration, but she understands. She gets it, man. She's in there and she gets it, and she's in it for the right reasons. And I think that goes down for the whole intent thing as well. So Echo Bodine, these type of, I name off top Hans Hosler. Same. Loved his style. His Austrian style. Go in there. Look. Pay attention. You are dead. You are dead. You cannot stay here anymore. What is your problem? What do you want us to know? Let's go. There's things to do. And the ballroom dancer on top of it. Absolutely. Wonderful, great books. Say what you want about Amityville Horror. I did like probably 2 hours on that. So go back and reference on the playlist if you want to know more about that whole thing. But again, context and the cigarette thing, So if all you see is Lloyd say, oh, it could have been PK. She's throwing the knives in the wall. She's breaking the glass. I'm all for it. Highly possible. That would all have to be sorted and be tested. And, if you found that important. But personally, a lot of the people that I know look at that, discuss it, talk about it. What are we spending time on? What's the most important thing here? Finding out what's tormenting this family and how to stop it. I don't want to spend 6 weeks on what busted the picture frame, because I can get 2 or 3 good mediums in here and get everybody's take on it and sort what broke the picture frame. Oh, that was the teenage girl who's got angst about everything going on in her house, and mom and dad fighting, everybody screaming, everybody sleeping in the living room floor. She's causing that. But that's not what's doing this. See my point? Yep. Hurricane Mills. Why do I know that? Lisa, what is that? I'm thinking of Haley Mills is why it's not. You said Hurricane Mills. Now I'm seeing Haley Mills in, I don't know what, Swiss Family Robinson or something. I'm getting flashes. Isn't that weird? Okay, moving on. It's because I want to get this. So this was kind of fun, but again, I think people can be haunted in another way. And then I have probably the scariest thing I've ever, that really makes me shudder just to think about it at the very end here. So, but it's the ghosts that are attached to a person for a specific reason. So this is still the Antonio stuff, but it kind of goes along with that, but it's a little different. And this is what I mean by it. It's okay, say it's somebody that has a bone to pick, revenge, something against this person, and willfully attaches themselves to that person to make that person miserable for whatever reason, or to torment, or to just haunt. Okay, that person. So as seen in Ghost, Patrick Swayze going after the bad guy and trying to, you could say he was haunting him, not just one specific thing. I would say it would be more in the category of focusing on that one. And that's what I mean by that. So what would come under that category? Somebody that's trying to get revenge, somebody that's trying to help. Okay, I know multiple stories where ghosts come back to help the living because they see them going down a certain path that they're familiar with. Whether they know the person or not, they're familiar with the energy and they can see what's coming. So they come in and they jump in to help, because that not only helps that person, the living, it also helps the dead. Same time. Energy, back and forth. Good brings good, bad brings bad. Just like Tater said. Tater was smarter than people, the average bear, wasn't he? Okay, so what's next? Here's an example. And I had heard about this one, but I don't know that much about it, so I thought it was kind of fun. In Japan, the concept of, I'm not going to say it right, yurei ghosts often involve spirits attaching to individuals due to unresolved grudges or emotional ties. For instance, the story of Oiwa from Yatsuya Kaidan Tale, butchered it. This is why we need Steve. Depicts a vengeful ghost. He doesn't know any more than I do. He just plays it off better because he's a pro. Just so you know. I'm joking. He does know. That was a little joker. I miss him so bad. Don't you miss him? Haunting her unfaithful husband, following him to exact revenge no matter where he goes. So, this is also good too. Online forums like BuzzFeed's 2022 article, 18 stories from people who lived in haunted places, include accounts where individuals felt pursued by entities across different locations. One person described hearing voices and experiencing disturbances that persisted her after moving, suggesting the entity was tied to them personally. So it suggests that. We don't know that much about the case, but we can just go ahead and let him have that one. So I didn't know that much about the little, do I still have that? Oh, wait, I do. This is a short, but I wanted to share it because they tell it better than I can. And I was unaware, and I think it's a nice, neat story. So let's give this one a shot. The Japanese ghost, the legend.
Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Ever heard of the ghost so terrifying that even mentioning her name could bring you bad luck? Meet Oiwa, Japan's most feared vengeful spirit. Oiwa's tragic story dates back to the Edo period. She was a devoted wife until her husband, Tamiya Iemon, betrayed her. He poisoned her so he could marry another woman. But the poison didn't kill her instantly. It disfigured her face beyond recognition. Blinded by pain and rage, she died a gruesome death. And that's when the horror truly began. They says her spirit returned, haunting Iemon relentlessly. No matter where he looked, he saw her twisted, rotting face staring back. Driven to madness, he met a brutal end, just as Oiwa wanted. To this day, actors performing her story in Yotsuya Kaiden offer prayers before rehearsals, because those who don't, they suffer real-life misfortunes. Coincidence? Or Oiwa's curse? Would you dare say her name at night? Let me know in the comments. And if you love spooky stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Ever heard of the ghost?
Wow, huh? Good stuff. I mean, I can never pronounce all those words, so I let him do it for you. So very interesting. Another good example. So we probably have a 1,000 stories like that here in the States and all around the globe. I mean, it's tale as old as time, right? Would you stay around to act out revenge? I mean, I would say it's got to be high on the list. It's got to be a very high percentage of ghosts who decide to stay back, because if you're that angry, you're attached to that energy. This is how you went out, and you're mad at that person. And you don't have any help working through that. You're going to take it with you. Yeah, like Bloody Mary, or like I said, 1,000 other stories, right? And you don't have anybody to help you work through that. That's why we say it's like therapy, you know. I mean, look at that one story we were talking about last night. The poor wife of was it Sarah of Patrick Henry. You know, it's so easily to take that story wrong, where we could take it out of context and think, oh man, he was a real jerk for locking her downstairs and, you know, this and that. He had no other choice. In his book, he had studied all the different places around for her care, and all of them are horrific. And he felt that he could care for her better himself, and with his, you know, servants, let's call them slaves like they were. But, you know, in the house, and people were part of the family. He had 13 kids, you know. And at the same time, this son of a gun got on his horse and rode into St. John's Church to give one of the best speeches that we're celebrating 250 years later. The wherewithal of people and the mindset, you know. So you could easily take that as a guy that is obsessed with his position and left all his woes behind in that house to whoever to care for it. When I believe the opposite was true. He cared so much, because it would have been so easy and so of the time and so of the rich and the affluent who had the money to say, here, put her in a carriage and just take her to the nearest asylum and lock her up so they can do whatever. And I'll get on with my work. He didn't do that. So that tells me something about character there, you know. So if she went out with that kind of anxiety and that kind of mental instability, you know, she'd be a ghost that you'd have to sit there and sort through that, the stuff that she had in life, and then work on. You're dead, you don't have to suffer with that anymore, right? Like our young lady our young prostitute in the cellar that choked me. She was showing in the way that she knew what I was understanding was, this is what I saw. This is what happened when I trusted someone and they turned on me. It sparked her, it triggered her. But she picked the one in the room that would listen and understand, and we worked through a lot of stuff really fast. Luckily, it was fast, because I think if it continued on, I probably would have turned a lovely shade of blue. But she found a way. And if that had been in another situation, or it had been 10 years earlier or 20 years earlier, before I understood, in that moment, I wouldn't have had the wherewithal to be calm and listen to her while being choked by hands I couldn't see. It's kind of hard to do. Don't ask me how I did it, because I'm not taking credit for it. It's not like I had all this mindset. It just happened, you know. It's wild. Anyway, so what did I want to show you at the end here? Let me try to remember. What is next? Oh, okay. So it's just the follow-up. So HPS, now we got a new acronym for haunted person syndrome. So funny. The model suggests that some people experience reoccurring supernatural encounters due to a mix of sensory sensitivity, stress, and belief in the paranormal. These experiences might not depend on specific location, but rather on the individual's perception and psychological state. The San Antonio case supports this, as the family disturbances followed them across multiple homes, hinting that the haunting could be an internal or personal phenomenon applied by their environment. There's that. Now, intelligent hauntings speak for themselves. A hybrid view, stories of intelligent hauntings where entities interact with the living often blur the line, and they're my favorite kind. For example, in the Bell Witch case, the entity seemed to target specific family members, suggesting a personal connection, yet it also became associated with the land, the Bell Witch Cave. But we had Eric in here a couple weeks ago that said the cave had nothing really to do with that, so take that with a grain of salt. This raises the possibility that some hauntings start with a place, but latch onto people, or vice versa. Makes perfect sense. So place-centric haunting, okay, or residual energy. So many traditional ghost stories tie hauntings to locations with traumatic histories, like the Lizzie Borden house or the Whaley house, where events imprint energy that replays like a recording. These residual hauntings don't interact with people intelligently and are fixed to a site. However, this doesn't explain cases where individuals report consistent experiences regardless of where they are. So again, going back to the haunted person, it happens wherever I go. It seems to follow me. You know, when you start getting into the feeling of it, is it a familiar energy? Is it the same one? Is it one like you know when it's coming because it's a familiar atmosphere to you? However, your sensories are picking that up, whether it's a smell, you know, we smelled roses, we smelled sulfur, we did this, you know, there was this smell, you know, decay or lilacs or whatever it may be. So cases like the Bell Witch and the San Antonio family suggest that entities can attach to individuals. Folklore across cultures, such as the Japanese Onryo, vengeful spirits, or African traditions of ancestor spirits following descendants. Again, that would go with our native as well. It's kind of a given. Reinforces this idea. Modern anecdotes like those from paranormal investigators or everyday people often describe entities that seem to stick with them after visiting haunted sites, as if triggered by an encounter. Very, very common and serious in some cases. Psychological angle. Now, some researchers, like Lloyd, some researchers argue that what we perceive as hauntings might stem from the mind. Again, I'm not saying he's wrong. Don't misquote me. I can't even quote me correctly, but you know what I'm saying? I mean no harm. The HPS study persists that stress, trauma, or belief can make people interpret ambiguous sensations, a cold breeze or a creaking floor, as ghostly, creating a self-reinforcing loop, like seeing the pile of clothes at night, you know, that looks like a person sitting in the chair, you know, and you're like froze, in fear, you can't move. And in the morning, oh, it's, you know, clothes. If someone believes they're haunted, they might carry that perception wherever they go, effectively haunting themselves. Again, true. All of these things can be true. The stories and studies suggest that people can, excuse me, be haunted by entities or ghosts, not just places. Excuse me. Much better. Whether this reflects an external spirit or psychological state, or a mix of both, remains open to interpretation. And my friends, we're right back where we started. Open to your interpretation, your opinion, your theory. Why I started this whole thing off with, you know, theories, my theory of, you know what, it's my space, it's our space, it's our chat, it's our learning spot. We're learning from each other. We're talking about ideas, we're kicking around things, we're telling jokes. You know, we might do some nostalgia, some conspiracy, some history. Funny how all those things in true crime seem to tie all into the paranormal, supernatural, and metaphysical. Again, good news. Some of our guests that were not doing so well physically, had a hard part in their journey, are doing much better and coming back. We're setting up new shows for that. But this one, I love doing these because if I can look at something that I might have known for a couple of years or been familiar with a study or even my own experiences, and I can look at them differently and glean a little extra or see it, you know, from somebody else's vantage point, you know, I think we learn a little bit from it. I'm one of those people that I want to learn something new every day, even if it's something small. You know, whatever it may be. I love the research. I love to dig in and go, wow, that's an amazing, you know, anecdote, or that's an amazing tale or story. Wow, that's a crazy case, whether crime or otherwise. Really like doing that. And I think that's part of being a light worker. I don't know if you guys are similar, but you always want to be stimulated in that way. I think it does keep our psychic muscles working as well. Our think tanks, you know, on, you know, a rolling boil or a rolling simmer, maybe. In my case, it's usually a rolling boil, but I think it injects new idea and new life into a lot of these old stories, because something that I have found also, looking back at some of these retro TV shows, especially coming out of the 70s, 80s, 90s, they knew so much. Yeah, the scientists, they had their thing, and again, portrayed in the movie Poltergeist and all the others, an entity where the group comes in and they've all got their ideas until the thing happens and they go, woof, that's it. Now they're listening. They're believers now, right? Love those parts. But that happens in real life. Unfortunately, not in all cases. A lot of these cases get really drug out, and these people get no help, and they just wind up, fading off into the distance. You always get that thing at the end. The occurrences continue. But there's those great little stories that happen to us that, like I came in the beginning and said why it's so important to me. And I guess what sparked it is I have a couple people say, hey, why don't you get this person on? Why don't you get this person on? And I go and I look and I go, wow, man, I don't know. Like, my whole reason to have this person on would just be, are you sure? Do you really? What? And you came to this conclusion. How? And what do you, you're doing this for the money, right? You do this for what are you talking about? Because at this point, it'd be like bringing in if you're a jeweler and you've been in the jewelry business for 50 years and you've seen, junk come in and out and electroplate this and gold dip that and fake paste, this, that, and the other thing. When somebody holds you a diamond, when somebody's holding you, giving you we used to call it paste back in the day, but now they've got so sophisticated. And people are just so shitty sometimes to get $1. Again, I think that's where the evil start. Like, it's okay. I do a lot of shows with my jewelry, and of course with the Native American, it's all connected to gemstones, right? Quick story. So you go up to somebody's table and they're selling, maybe it's handmade, maybe it isn't. Most of it's like drop ship kind of stuff. They buy a bunch of it and sell it. Yep, CZs. Yep. And you look at the table and you see this, pretty blue stone. Maybe it's a real nice jewelry. And you're looking at it and you're thinking, oh man, I'm not sure if this is real turquoise or not. And you look down at the small writing in the box that it's coming in. So it's obviously printed somewhere, but it might be a card that they have in there. It says genuine gemstone. Yes, it is a genuine gemstone. It's called howlite. It's normally comes in white with like a gray, real pretty pattern, like crackled marble. Right. And then they dye it turquoise and they put it in silver casing of whatever, pick your choice. And they say genuine gemstone. So when somebody looks down at it and goes, man, that's turquoise and silver. No, it's howlite and silver. It's a real gemstone, but you're being fooled by the flim flam words. And somebody behind the counter thought that was okay. It's a slight deception. It's a little bit true. It is true on the surface, but damn well, that's not what this person thinks. Now, if you saw that and the seller went up and said, as they sold it, I want you to know that this is a genuine gemstone. It is dyed howlite, and its metaphysical meaning is this, and its properties are these. And I don't know why you're purchasing this, but it's a lovely piece as long as you know it's not turquoise. That would be honest. And in the paranormal, it's the same way. But it's true. We started blurring that line between truth and advertising, and sleight of hand, and taking things out of context, and caring more about your title and proving your theory to be correct. And I can back it up with this, this, and this, and this. I don't have any papers. I don't know if you have papers. Not asking to see them. Diplomas on the wall. I got stories. You know, I got people that it makes me smile to think in the realm of the 5 people you meet in heaven. Like, will I bump into somebody and go, "Why do you feel familiar? Energy feels familiar, but I can't quite place you." I get that in life, you know. Well, did I see at the Target? Did I see at the, the Wawa? Did I, was I a bartender? Was I, did I help you solve a problem at the, it's a customer service, whatever? Did I know you from the meeting over here? You ever get that where it's like the person, but they're out of the element that you knew them in? So it's like just so awkward, you know? I think that's what it's like on the other side, except I think you feel them first. Feel that energy first, because when we tune in, if you have abilities, when you tune in, that's what you pick up. Whatever that prominent energy is, that familiar energy. And over there, can you imagine? It's a familiar energy. Well, how do I know you? Well, you helped get me. You and a bunch of really nice people were in this old barn one night, and you guys worked for hours in a sweat until I would listen to you, until you got my mom to help come over and with my dog, and you guys walked me into the light, and I've been over here working and helping other people because you helped me. How cool would it be to hear that? And of course, you don't do it for that. You do it because it feels like the right thing to do. Am I right? And I mean, wouldn't you, if you saw a kid get hit, by a car and knocked off a bicycle, wouldn't you, your first thing to be to run to help that stranger? So why don't we think about ghosts like that? Why do we exploit it? Just asking. Why do we have to use it to prove a theory? Because it's going to sell a book, or it's going to prove a theory as a scientist. Well, that boy didn't see his dead grandfather and set his life down on the course right. All ghosts aren't real, and you can't put it in a jar, and you can't prove it, and you can't reproduce it. So therefore it is not. It's a fig Newton of his imagination. Well, listen to me, you jerk. You just broke that kid's heart. And now, instead of going, finishing that last class in college, when his grandfather came down and said, "Stick with it, son. I believe in you. Don't make, mistakes like I did," or whatever the message may be, like that young boy on the ocean, or the beach, excuse me, got a message from his father. It made him skip on towards being a successful human being, and going after finishing school and going on a career and being a decent dude, and not being hung up with, dad issues. He found a way to tell him. I know 1,000 stories like that, and that's not hyperbole. But this guy's got to prove a point, so he's going to break a few hearts. Well, it's important that they know the truth now and not kid themselves. That damn cigarette came through the freaking ceiling. I'm just saying. So, listen, it's late. We're late. I had more stuff to show you, but let me make sure I've gotten all the good stuff. So, yeah, we talked about, God bless her, Doris. And you're trying to get people to believe you, and they're not believing you, and you're going through all that stuff, and it just adds to it, and that's part of it, and that's part of the breaking down of the spirit. And the only way to win is to keep building that spirit up. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you this again, because this is like one of the scariest things that I've had to tell people, or when I realized it, I just went, wow, I'm glad I found this out, because that's a biggie. Energy. Okay, it's very powerful. Now, this is opinion, theory, experience, and confirmed by multiples that I trust. Be careful, people. Speaking ill of the dead, I believe, has more power in that sentence than we've gotten familiar with it. Don't speak ill of the dead. There's a lot of truth in that, because here's the thing. I can't be more serious when I tell you that if you lose someone that you would feel like, you know, I hate to admit it, but it's a relief because I had enough of that. Whatever that situation may mean to you, if you're in a bad relationship, a bad whatever, don't go on about on and on and on because I can't get him now and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to constantly have their name in my mouth and I'm going to be constantly talking about them, I'm going to be constantly putting out that bad energy. You may not be rid of them. You're bringing them in, you're holding them close, and you're hooking into them. And they're hooking into you. Now, that's not true in every case. But one of the saddest things that I've seen is this. Now, this is just a cartoon rendition, but you get the idea. Here is a woman, could be any woman or any person that is going through maybe a bad relationship, a bad whatever, abusive relationship. What did we say earlier? That a lot of these young people that went through abuse and went through turmoil as kids went through severe hauntings later on in life. The kind of hauntings where now you're the haunted person and it's following you. Please do yourself a favor. And I've tried to tell this to so many people that won't listen. And they don't realize what they're doing to themselves. But if you've gotten rid of a bad energy in your life, don't speak of them. If you do, speak good energy towards them. What's it going to hurt? It's lighter to you than going through all that regurgitating bad feelings, right? It's very hard to do. But here's a woman that's at her husband's funeral walking away. And in her mind, she's thinking, I no longer have to deal with what I just walked away from. I'm done. I never have to think of him again. He's out of my life. I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to get him back by doing this and all this like revengey stuff and talk about him every chance you can get and what a horrible person he was. Look, if you want to do that in like a therapy kind of situation, not just with a professional, but with a friend that you trust, get it done, finish it out, and then put this, it's hard to do, blessed energy toward that person. Wish them well on their journey. I'm done. I'm finished. Rebuke it. Move on. Don't leave it in an ugly state because you're putting these hooks and you're pulling them in. Because as she's thinking these things, behind her is him manifesting in another way to continue the abuse, to continue the latch on. And that's just my theory from things I've seen that can get a person to be a haunted person, because now you've cursed yourself and them, and they're hooked in, and they start getting stronger, and they realize they can affect you by just little whispers or whatever they may be doing to continue to affect you. And there's lots of stories to back that up as well. And I could say that is probably one of the scariest things. We are responsible for our words, so when we put it out there, we just remember what I said. Fix it by happy thoughts and energy, blessed thoughts and energy. Wish you well. Pray for that person. Do whatever you need to do to end it on a happy note, because that energy is so important. And I think that breaks a lot of cords. I think that breaks a lot of hauntings on a personal basis. And it certainly breaks a lot of curses, because you take the power away like that. The same way you take power away in a lot of these hauntings. I didn't say all. I said a lot of these. The same thing that came together and brought strangers together to help a woman break a curse that was 6 generations. It was love. It was working together. It was staying in the light. It was staying into the source. All the things that repel it, that it cannot stand to be around. The fear and the suffering, the loathing and the negative, and turning you negative is a prize for them. Don't give it to them. There you go. So, did we answer the question? I think we did. but we started right back where we began. We ended where we began, and that's the way it is in this paranormal. But I think we had a different way of looking at things. I've got a lot more stories. I'm sorry I rattled on, but this is important to me. If you want to stick around, it's going to be late, but I really want to show you the story. It's about 10 minutes, but something similar happened to me, and that's why it's so important for me to help people get it right, or at least open their minds to consider that some of these things are coming in on love. Some of these things are making a difference in people's lives. I know it did in mine. And if you've ever had an experience where a loved one has come back to give you a message or a hug or a positive sentence, words, anything, smile, can make all the difference in the world. And what I started this out with was how people can so coldly try to shut that down. Such a sensitive subject that's already teetering on the head of a pin anyway. For some people, to just knock it off and flick it with no more thought than throwing away a piece of, candy wrapper or something. I think we need to take a little bit more care in our words and what we're perceiving and what we're putting out there, especially for the young people coming up with abilities that are trying to sort this out. I think it's important for all light workers to consider that. And this is a good story. So after this, we're out of here. And I love you all. Thank you for being here tonight. And thank you for participating. Great stuff in the chat tonight. I'm sorry if I didn't get to answer all the questions.
I suppose the supernatural to me, prior to what my experience was in October, is one of a real reluctance to believe. I didn't really get the notion that ghosts existed, but definitely as a kid I was always afraid of the cellar and this one particular back room. And I can go there today and I can remember being 9, and there's something horribly haunting about this back room. You sort of feel like you're not supposed to be there. But I can definitely say that I had to exit that room and run up those stairs because of the feeling of something coming from my back. And even now, I'm a grown man and I go down and come up these stairs and I get this feeling that I'm either being pushed up and out of these stairs or that I physically need to get out of there because it's not supposed to be there.
Like Salwa, Mitch Hall had a ghostly encounter with a dead relative that significantly changed the way he lived his life. Salwa's experience happened in her middle age. Mitch's happened in his 20s. But its origin can be traced a lot further back. Mitch had a wonderful childhood. His parents, Carol and Mike, homeschooled Mitch and his brother Jason for part of their childhood. And every so often, the entire family would take off for a whole year and go visit relatives in Europe and Australia. The Halls ended up in Northern Ontario, running a general store and restaurant. There were tough times, but everyone in the family pitched in, working together, and when they found the time, playing together. Over the years, Mitch has come to understand that the real benefit of a tight, loving family is not just the camaraderie and the good times. The real and lasting benefit is the relationship between parent and child.
We've always had, a really close bond, my father and I. He was a particularly loving guy, really charismatic, and I always remember being totally taken by him as a kid. I always remember people that met him said, he was just a super charismatic and sort of powerful man that had, a huge presence. Just a little over 8 years ago now, Michael developed a sarcoma cancer of his foot. And then a friend said to me, Mitch, you should prepare yourself that your father could die. Have you thought about that? And I guess I hadn't. I guess that was something that just sort of slipped over my head. Dad was a big, strong guy. Nothing could take him out. He'd be fine back home soon. I remember going in and seeing my father in a pretty poor way. He was in intensive care. A clot had moved from his leg up and into his heart, which ceased his heart to function properly and destroyed him. I definitely felt the loss of a hugely important figure in my life.
Maybe it was the deep attachment between father and son. Maybe it was 20-year-old Mitch's uncertainty about not knowing where he was going with his life. Most likely it was a mixture of both. But the loss of his father shook Mitch to the very core of his being. He lost his energy for life and fell into a depression. To escape from his despair, he began to abuse alcohol and marijuana. Mitch knew he was on a downward spiral. What he feared most was that he'd never find the energy to pull himself out of it. Things were going from bad to worse when Mitch had an unexpected visitor.
I remember this one night that changed all that for me. It was probably about midnight on October and a Wednesday night. I remember sort of sitting up and thinking, why am I feeling like this? I get this feeling that there's someone else in here. I hear pretty prominent footsteps in my room that sound very authoritative. I'm instantly uneasy, and I get this feeling like, oh God, what's going on? And from where the footsteps occurred is there's a bathroom. I could hear, it sounded like taps being turned on and turned off again. And at this point, I'm very anxious. I want to get up and investigate. As I decide to get up, I sort of decide that that's a bad idea. And I stay in bed and I do the little kid thing where the covers come up to here and I'm just freaking. I basically decided that I'm just going to ride whatever's going on out in bed. Just leave the television on and try and just focus on that. I eventually nod off, and what I awoke to was kind of the feeling like if you were to sort of blow hot air across your hand on the back of my head. Right about here. So I'm asleep like this, and I get this feeling right here, and simultaneously I wake up and come around like this. Before me, what I see is a brilliant orb that's about 6 to 8 centimeters in diameter that have spurs of light that are shafting sort of out from this core. The brilliance of what I'm seeing is like nothing else I've ever seen. Basically all I had a chance to see was in that 3 seconds, this orb right there, and it held for a split second as if you catch a deer in the forest and it looks into your eyes and then bolts. I got up out of bed and jotted down as best as what I could a description as what I'd just seen. I guess the first thing that brought the notion on that this was most likely my father was when I woke up and went downstairs. I think that it would be pretty good to assume that would be my father, and that would be his way of trying to help his son. Maybe it was important enough for him to swing back down to planet Earth for a night and shake his kid up and say, you gotta get over me. So all my questions and all of my fears and all of my concerns and all of my longings, everything, had kind of been shaken like this, dumped out on the ground. I'm really fortunate, I guess, for so many reasons. I've had an incredible life, wonderful parents, the best on which anyone could ever ask for. And yeah, it's a damn shame if I don't get on with something great in my life for my own sake, let alone paying homage to the people that bring you into this world.
Both Mitch and Salwa had experiences they believe were a guiding hand from dead relatives. Both decided to follow that guidance and as a result made huge decisions about their lives. Usually in Western culture, when a person tells of connecting with a dead loved one, it's because they actively sought out the relative using a medium. Mitch and Salwa didn't do that. They didn't go looking, but they still believed they got advice from their dead relations. And so their experiences didn't only change their behavior, they also had an effect on their openness to and acceptance of the spiritual and supernatural.
I guess I consider myself more spiritual in a sense that I never really embraced being spiritual. I didn't really know what that was, but in one sentence I would say that experience has given me life again.
Well, there you go, folks. I told you it was worth seeing. I love those. That happened to me, and I hope if it has not happened to you, I hope it does. I hope you get a validation, whether it's a cardinal or a butterfly or a dragonfly or your dog that's passed, jumping up on the bed or clicking down the hall, because that is the part of this paranormal, supernatural, metaphysical side that I absolutely love, that doesn't get spoken of often. And I think it needs to come back, because this is where we start realizing again that we are talking to human beings, or the essence thereof. A human being that was alive, that I believe are still living in some other existence, and very much so, and still love, still care, but they can also be angry and still mean and still vengeful. So again, we know those tools, use the right tool for the job, and we know that love and light always works. You have to be persistent and unwavering, and that's the trick, because it's very hard in those conditions to hold those things. But I think at our core, we understand that. And if you can move through the chaos and see through it, a great example of that was the Native American, oh gosh, I forget his name now. Help me out, Chad, if you remember, in Poltergeist, who knew that the entity was trying to distract them with the boy, because they wanted the girl. And they were trying to get everybody to pay attention over there by these illusions and tricks and things that they could do. And he just very calmly went over and picked up the girl and just sat in a corner with her and held on to her and wouldn't let her go. And nobody understood that. So he was very calm, very stoic. And stoic is something that we talk about a lot in this chat as well, too. I highly recommend the channel Mind and Soul. Look into some of the Greek philosophers teaching you to to think about your reactions, don't act emotionally, how to move through this journey so much easier. And I think so many of you are on that level now, where that stoicism is like the next level. Like, how do I get through this world as an empath when it's going through all these growing pains and all of this turmoil that seems like it's much bigger than it really is, but we know there's an underlying evil that is forcing that and igniting that. So much of this low-hanging fruit that's just so susceptible to whichever way the evil wind blows. So we have to stand in that we have to stand in the tempest. There's no two ways about it. There is no other choice. You either stand or you get taken down with them. So in my book, there's just there is no choice there. You stand, plain and simple. You just have to know who you're standing with, what you're standing for. It makes it a whole lot easier. But Lisa, yes, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of different episodes. It's really sweet, but you think about it, it was based on, like I said, it was James Van Praagh was a consultant, and the other medium, she's fantastic, and I cannot remember her name, and forgive me, but she's great, and she's very upfront, and she's very talented, and she's done a lot of good and a lot of crime, solving cold cases and things like that. A lot of helping of wayward earthbound, and she just basically, anytime she got to talk about it, she would say, 6 episodes in, it started to get a little wonky. She would say that, that didn't happen, or it wouldn't happen like that, or that just doesn't make any kind of metaphysical sense, and you got to take that out, and the producers would argue with it, and the writers would, but we have to, we got to keep the audience interested, and that kind of thing. So as long as you go in knowing, you can kind of make it a fun task of going, okay, it was true up until then. And as long as you know how to do that and take it in for the quaint town, is a beautiful town, one of those ones you'd love to, to have a storefront in or have a home there. And the stories are good. The husband is sweet. It gets a little crazy there toward the end. I mean, he's just supportive, and he understands when his wife has to, go hang out with a ghost for a while to solve their problems. And like I said, toward the end, it's a little crazy, but it still keeps that vein of truth throughout. And it's well written, and I highly recommend it for that. If you want deciphering ghosts and what they really meant when they were here, even though we took it wrong and we went down a whole nother road for whatever, we took the wrong exit on that ghostly highway. You're watch Kim Russo, watch Celebrity Ghost Stories Revisited, when she goes back. I forget what it's called. Oh gosh, I know it as well as my own. But she also has a great website, and Echo Bodine is very good, and so on and so on. There you go. All right, guys. So good night. Sorry I kept you late, but I thought this was an important show. It never ceases to amaze me how much we can dissect a ghost story to learn from it. That last one is my way of saying, listen, all you skeptics out there, free speech. I love the talks. I love the debate, all that kind of thing. But here's the deal. You're missing it. You're missing it. When you get to the other side, you're going to say the same thing that George Carlin said, that I have on good authority was the first words out of his mouth after he got through whatever tunnel he went through, or, whatever. He lifted up or circled around. I don't know what he did. But when he landed and looked around, he said, no shit. And I think you're going to be saying that too. Not everything can be put in a file cabinet. Not everything could be proven in a science lab. And don't you dare bring up that Phillips experiment to me, because I saw that shit. And I'm telling you right now, the only thing clinical about that was the white jacket that one guy was wearing. Maybe he had a stethoscope. I don't want to know. But here's the deal. You can't reproduce this. You can't reproduce it in a haunted house. You can't send a team of 30 people in there with the best equipment in the world. If the ghost doesn't want to talk to you, or the entity doesn't want to talk to you, it'll zip over to the other house, or it'll go do whatever it's got to do, or to go dormant, or just hang out and make fun of you. There's no definitives. The only definitive I can think of in the paranormal is the fact that nobody has all the answers. And I don't think we're supposed to. I love you all. Be good humans. Okay? Good night, everybody. Take your shoes off. If you can dance, do a little dance. Dance the blues away. I'll see you all tomorrow night. Oh, announcement. Our Tuesday night movie. Drum roll. Froze. Drum roll. You got to drum. Can you give me a little roll? Here we go. Hold on. It's going to be, I'm trying real hard to do this. I think I can pull it off. We are going to have a double feature. I think we should use some laughs and celebration. So tomorrow night's Tuesday night movie, only on Rumble. So get over there. And like I said, it's free. Just get you an app, get it on your computer, whatever. Sign up and watch with us. Okay. We only do this so we can hang out. So our double feature is going to be a laugh riot from a laugh duo. We are going to watch The Time of Their Lives, Abbott and Costello, double feature with Hold That Ghost. So I hope I see you tomorrow night. I love you all. It will be probably 8 o'clock tomorrow night. So if you're over at Lee's and he's running a little late, let everybody know you might have to come over to start the movie if you haven't seen it. I'm going to play Time of Their Lives, and I'm literally take this into consideration when somebody else has a channel with the show. And I know Lee gets going. He has a ball over there, and I wouldn't want to step on anybody's toes or keys in that, or strings for that matter. So I just wanted to let you know, I normally started at 8:30 to give them plenty of breathing room. So I don't, if there's a couple people there that want to catch the beginning of the movie, they forget because they're over there and they go, oh my gosh, look what time it is. And they miss the first 20 minutes of it. So I'm going to start it at 8 since it's a double feature. So if anybody is in here that's going to be in that one, I'm not telling you not to, to leave Lee's, but I'm going to play The Time of Their Lives first because that's actually on my channel and we've watched it about 2 years ago. So you may have seen that. And then I'll do Hold That Ghost second so you won't miss anything. Do you see how freaking nice I am? What the heck? Who else does that? Who else does that? Cisco loves you. Be good humans. Good night, everybody. Dance, baby. Be good humans. So much low-hanging fruit out there. One bad apple. Don't let it spoil your butt. Don't dare. Let me tell you something. There's a lot more people with common sense. You just don't hear from them as much. We'll see. I love you. You'll be all right.